There's a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. You can be in a room full of people. You can be in a relationship, a family, a workplace full of colleagues who know your name. You can be surrounded by people who would describe you as a friend and still feel completely, utterly invisible, not ignored exactly, not excluded, just not quite seen, not quite reached. Present in every room, but somehow never fully landing in any of them. If you know this feeling, you know how hard it is to explain, because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. People would be confused if you told them. You seem fine. You seem connected. You seem like someone who has people around them, but you've been waiting your whole life for someone to actually see you, and you're not sure anyone ever has. Let's start with what invisibility actually is psychologically, because it's more specific than loneliness, more specific than social anxiety, more specific than introversion. Psychological invisibility is the experience of moving through the world without your full self being reflected back to you, without your actual thoughts, feelings, complexity, and inner life landing on the people around you in a way that says, I see you, the real you. Not the version you perform, not the version that's easy to be around. You. And it almost always begins in childhood. Psychologists who study attachment and early development have found that the experience of being seen, what they call attunement, is not just emotionally important, it is developmentally critical. When a caregiver consistently reflects a child's inner experience back to them, when they notice the feeling, name it, respond to it, the child develops a stable sense of self. A belief that their inner world is real, valid, and worth expressing. But when that attunement is absent, when the caregiver is emotionally unavailable, distracted, overwhelmed, or simply not equipped to see beyond the surface, something different happens. The child learns that their inner world is not particularly interesting to the people around them, that the full complexity of what they feel and think and experience is not something that lands, not something that matters. Not something worth bringing into the room, so they begin to edit it out. Here's what that editing looks like as it becomes automatic. It starts as adaptation. You learn to present the version of yourself that gets a response, the version that is easy, pleasant, low maintenance, the version that doesn't require too much from the people around you, and it works in the same way that all early survival strategies work. It reduces friction, it maintains connection, it keeps the peace. But over time, the edited version becomes the default. The full version, the one with the complicated feelings, the real opinions, the genuine inner life, stops being offered. Not because you decided to hide it, but because you stopped believing anyone wanted to see it. And then something more painful happens. You start to lose access to it yourself. When you have spent years presenting an edited version of yourself, years of monitoring how you land, managing how you're perceived, shrinking the parts of you that feel like too much. The unedited version becomes harder to locate. The connection to your own inner life weakens. You stop knowing what you actually think, actually feel, actually want, because those things have been filtered for so long that the signal has gotten very faint. This is what psychologists call self-alienation. And it is one of the most quietly devastating consequences of chronic invisibility. Let's talk about the specific environments that create invisible people. The first is the emotionally preoccupied household, the family where a parent's emotional needs are so large and so present that the child's needs simply don't register. The child learns early that the emotional weather in the room belongs to the parent, and their job is to manage it, not to add to it. Their own inner world becomes something they carry privately, alone, because bringing it into the room only makes things harder. The second is the achievement-focused household, where what you do is noticed and rewarded, but who you are is not particularly interesting, where the report card gets attention but the feeling behind it doesn't, where the performance is seen but the person performing is invisible. And the third, and perhaps the most insidious, is the household that looks fine from the outside, where nobody is obviously neglectful or cruel, where the basic needs are met and the family seems functional, but where emotional attunement is simply absent, where nobody is particularly curious about what is happening inside you, where you are fed and housed and educated and completely unseen. These children grow into adults who are extraordinarily good at functioning, at meeting expectations, at appearing fine, and who carry a quiet, persistent ache that they often cannot name. the ache of a self that was never fully met. Here's where it gets complicated, because invisible people are very often the most interesting people in any room. The depth of inner life that develops when you spend years not being seen, the richness of inner world that grows when the outer world doesn't reflect you back, is remarkable. Invisible people think deeply, feel deeply, notice everything, develop a complex, nuanced relationship with their own experience precisely because that experience had nowhere to go but inward. The tragedy is not that they have nothing worth seeing. The tragedy is that they stop believing anyone wanted to look. So, what does becoming visible actually require? The first thing is the hardest. You have to risk being seen before you have any guarantee that it's safe, because the catch of invisibility is this: if you only show the edited version, you only ever get responses to the edited version, which confirms that the real version isn't wanted, which keeps you invisible. The only way to break the cycle is to show something real and tolerate the vulnerability of not knowing how it will land. The second thing is finding the right witnesses. Not everyone is capable of seeing you. Not everyone has developed the attunement, the curiosity, the emotional presence to meet another person at depth. Finding the people who can, and staying in those relationships rather than retreating back into managed distance, is one of the most important things an invisible person can do. The third thing is turning the gaze inward, because you cannot be seen by others if you have lost sight of yourself. The work of becoming visible starts with becoming visible to yourself, with getting curious about your own inner life again, with treating your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences as worth knowing, whether or not anyone else is currently reflecting them back. Here's what I want to leave you with. You were not invisible because you were not worth seeing. You were invisible because you were in environments that didn't know how to look. That is a completely different thing, and somewhere in the right conversation with the right person in the right moment of genuine contact, you are going to say something real, and someone is going to lean in, not away, in. That moment exists. Don't stop making it possible. If this described something you've been carrying quietly for a long time, that's the place to start. And I want to say one last thing to anyone who has spent years wondering if the problem is them. It isn't. Visibility is not something you earn. It is not something you perform your way into. It is not something you get by finally becoming interesting enough or open enough or easy enough to be around. It is something that happens when two people are both genuinely present at the same time. You have always been present. You are just waiting for someone to show up on the other side. They exist. Keep the door open.